This video is about my experience with one bag travel, and so I wanted to get into it right away. I've been trying to do this one bag travel for the last few trips, and the last few times I've gone on a trip, I have not been able to do it. I've always had to have a side bag and like a personal item to carry on. That's still pretty minimal. I'm not checking anything in, but how do you go about doing that when you have other things to do? So a lot of people would say, oh, it's easier for men than women because you don't have to deal with like makeup and stuff like that. Fair. There are ways of downsizing your makeup bag, and like I've seen people go from a big old makeup box to simply just a little round thing you can put in there. Cool. I'm also a techie and nerd, so I have my little Game Boy thing that I bring with me and a couple other extra gadgets, and so I definitely have my version of makeup that takes up space. So it's not necessarily easier, it's just different what we're bringing on. Plus, there's plenty of girl techies out there, so they have tech and makeup, but then there's also people who might want to do like you might need to bring extra shoes or something like that. So depending on how you're going about this, you can get away with just wearing tennis shoes, even at a fancy event. That's what I did. I have nice all black tennis shoes. I cleaned them before on the trip. Since I was wearing a nice suit, but I was wearing tennis shoes with them, which is kind of like, oh, that's weird. But they're black, and so you couldn't really quite tell until you're looking straight at them, straight down. And so it was one of those things where, like, okay, it's not ideal. I'd much rather wear my slip-ons, but I didn't have room in my bag for it. So this is something I made a video about this already. I've even made a blog post about this already. But one bag travel has been really interesting to me because I've had to learn how to downsize more and more. And even though all of my clothes are pretty thin and they can roll up pretty quickly, pretty well, it's not always effective at still being able to keep just shirts. I might have to do an overshirt. I might have to put it in a suit. I actually managed to get a suit from Express. I used to work there. So I'm plugging them because I have not seen a suit quite like this, except for like some random ad on TikTok. But essentially, I don't know the materials, like nylon and polyester, but it's a very soft, stretchy suit. So when I lift my arm up, I don't have to worry about ripping it, which is a big deal. But also, when you fold it up, it doesn't get wrinkled. The pants can get a little bit wrinkled, so if you roll them up too tight or something like that, you can kind of mess it up. But if you just fold it, it's probably fine. And I put my pants, actually, I think I put two pants because I actually ended up wearing one during the conference. Two pants, one blazer, one button-up shirt, one undershirt, some socks, and a tie and underwear, all in one packing cube. And I put it in I'm using a TomTalk Navigator 66L or whatever. It's not liters, but it's like the 66T or something like that. And in that laptop compartment, there's actually a little bit of give, a little bit of space. And so I've been squishing down that packing cube to be nice and flat. It's not full, but it holds the whole suit. And I put that suit in that pocket, and then I put my actual clothes and like all my other stuff in the main compartment. Now, depending on how I go about my next trip, I might use my smaller personal item backpack instead of having a big old backpack. I'm not sure which is best, and actually, I'm really glad I made this smart decision because I was going to have to bring two bags. I knew that. Just to bring all the tech that I wanted to bring, like my recording kit and stuff like that, I needed to be able to pack it in a sling, and I need to have a sling that I can bring with me at the event itself. So you have to think about, what are you going to be doing on the trip? Are you going to be going on excursions? You might need a day bag for that. Are you bringing a tablet or recording gear? You might need to bring a sling. And so those are the things you have to think about when you're on this trip. And so even if you're doing one bag, you might have to still bring a second bag. You don't necessarily have to use one bag while you're traveling, or two bags while you're traveling, but you have to have two bags in the trip. So that is kind of a weird aspect to it. Depends on how rigid you are with the whole one bag philosophy. I really want to be rigid. Like, I really want to get down to just one bag and then maybe have a tiny day sling if I have to that's in there and just bring that with me when I'm going out places. But for the most part, it is really hard to do that. And I'll get to the whole tips and tricks that I mentioned in the title, but I wanted to share my experience with you first because there are a lot of things I've done on trips and had to deal with, and I was like, okay, let me see if I can share that experience first, and we'll touch on more experience at the end of the video, but then I also want to go through the different tips. Now, first and foremost, I went to Disney World with my family, and in our hotel, there was two sources of caffeine. Tiny little cups of coffee that are scalding hot because it's made for, the soccer mom Karens who want the burning hot Starbucks coffee. And it's very low on caffeine for the most part. It's pretty crappy coffee. It's scalding hot, so you can't drink it quickly, even if you ice it down. And it's tiny cups, you can't drink it quickly. So that didn't really quite work. The only other source of caffeine, like the only other one, was basically a white Monster that was $5 or $6 in the store in the hotel. Theoretically, we did go to like Walmart. I could have bought some caffeine there. I should have. I didn't think about it. But that was the only two options, and there wasn't really any caffeine at Disney World. And especially at this time, I was very addicted to caffeine. I needed to make sure I have it. And I was getting forced to wake up early in a time zone I'm not used to. So that was even more of an issue too. And I say forced. I mean, we're going to Disney World. So it's not like we're forced to go work, labor 12-hour days. But I was forced to wake up 2 or 3 hours earlier than I normally was in a 2-hour time difference. And so it was pretty brutal to wake up with not having enough caffeine to wake up with. And so what I started doing was trying to figure out ways, what can I get caffeine when I'm there? Like, well, I could do like, let's say I can go to a store and buy some, but let's say there's no store. So I started getting these little caffeine packets. I should have brought them out to show them, but they literally take up no space at all. Like there's literally a stick of gum, and then a lot of them are a little bit longer, about that big. And so the stick of gum ones are basically like Kroger or Walmart. They have little caffeine packets. Those are about 80 or 90 milligrams. They're not the greatest tasting. They're not necessarily the greatest for you, and they may not be satisfactory for what you really need. It might be good for like an afternoon pickup, but not for the main morning day. So what I've been doing is getting the Celsius packets. There's like you get like 15 of them for, I don't know, 13, 14 bucks. So, or around that price, depending on where you're at. And you just bring that box with you, or most of them, maybe depending on your trip, you might only need like 10. I actually bring a few extra because I often end up giving one to someone who really needs it. And it's also a great way to make friends on a trip. So that's my first tip. And that's been extremely helpful when it comes to just being able to function on a daily basis. And especially since like when I am going to the conferences like I was last week, that's one reason why I'm making this video. It's fresh in mind, all the issues I had to face even now. And I had a friend of mine who also told me a couple things that he had to face, so I figured let me go ahead and share these tips and tricks. The next one I want to say is that you are going to be working really hard, whether you're going to a conference or going to an island or going to explore a city. You're going to be go 10 to 20,000 steps a day. You may not be used to that. Even if you are, you're still exerting yourself mentally and physically. And so you want to make sure you are taking care of your body and making sure you actually keep your immune system strong. And I wasn't able to do much on this trip, but I actually did end up getting like bit by like a spider. Nothing like too bad. It wasn't getting discolored or infected per se, but it was getting really red and swollen to the point where I was concerned about it. I forgot that I brought a Benadryl with me. That's not a tip to bring with you, but you can count one as that, I guess. But like bringing a Benadryl with you in case you are getting an allergic reaction, that way you just have it in your bag. That's super helpful. That's not one of the tips, but the next one will be. And so that was one thing where I was like, okay, this tip is really helpful. And I did it on my second trip I ever took on my own. The first trip I ever took, I got a deathly illness. I got Legionnaire's disease, Legionella, from my conference. Actually, it was from the Airbnb that I stayed at for my conference. And I was sick for the entire month right after. And that normally would probably just deter anyone off because I was deathly ill. Had to go to the hospital, had pneumonia twice, had fluid in my lungs. And that was because I wore myself down so bad that by the end of the week, my immune system was just compromised. And so I was exposed to something, couldn't fight it off, and got sick. So the next conference I went to, which was many, many months later, I ended up bringing with me from the dollar store, so not really that great, but if you can find an alternative, it's great. Just little immune system boosters. I think it had elderberry and vitamin C and probably zinc, and just having those three things and just taking it once a day, that would be really helpful to you. And I just thought, like, since I was worried about getting sick again, I just started taking those every day. There also, at the same time, there was a nootropic mushroom supplement too, so I took both of those at the same time and just called it a day. But now I had a little bit more focus for the task at hand, and I had a little bit more immune system boost. So that's the second one. Toss in the Benadryl with that too as well. The next one, again, is another supplement, but a lot of people don't realize that you are going to be staying, especially at a conference like this. This is more geared towards what I just experienced at Vid Summit. But you're going to be working a lot. You're going to be doing a lot of movements. You're going to be probably carrying stuff. You're going to be physically active. And so physical endurance is very important. And there's been a lot of studies about how creatine can actually be very helpful to, first off, if you're not getting enough sleep, actually kind of repair the brain fog if you have sleep deprivation. You have to take a lot of it in order to have that benefit, but even just having a minimal amount could be better than having nothing, especially for the physical aspect. It takes about 5 to 10 grams, depending on your kilogram weight, of creatine for your body to absorb. Past that point, it starts benefiting your brain. And I didn't bring more than 5 grams per day, but I had about 5 days worth that I brought with me. And I think that was a very mindful thing to do because I was very active. I was still working out, and I was walking like 10,000 to 20,000 steps a day. So that's something that's very mindful that may be like, oh, very demure. That would be helpful to you to think about. So going away from the supplements, like we had the caffeine, right? We had the creatine, we had the, let's say, vitamins and immune system boosters. Cool. I would also say you don't necessarily know what place you're sleeping in, right? Maybe you don't find that the bed you're sleeping in the hotel is that clean and you're getting a little grossed out by it. I have this little sleeping sheet that is basically like sheets you have, but in a sleeping bag format. And so it's very thin, it's very fold-upable, and you literally takes up about this much space. About, I wish I had an alternative to show you, but I should have got all these out. I'm sorry. And it takes up no space at all. Super soft, super silky, and you just slip into the bed with it, and that way you can wash that when you get back rather than having to sleep in something you don't feel good. And actually, in my trip before this, I felt like it was a little too hot to sleep underneath a big old blanket, so I actually just slept in that little sleeping sheet. And it's like a little sock, essentially. Like you're a human sock. It was really comfortable, is what I'm trying to say. And that was really helpful. Another one, in addition to that same tip, is that I have a little portable towel, and it's just one of those quick dry, quick to fold up towels that, if for someone who swims a lot, it makes a big difference for me to have that versus having one of the hotel towels. I mean, granted, you could just toss it off, but maybe you don't have that, and just having something that you can keep on you to keep things dry is super helpful too. And then from there, let's see, there was another one that was really helpful. Just speaking of sleeping, having the little blindfold just to make your not to deal with all the lights and sleep a little bit more peacefully, especially on the plane or any kind of travel accommodation. Finally, out of all those little tidbits, earplugs, right? Just bring those with you. These are all related to sleep. Essentially, you want to make sure you have enough comfortableness in order to sleep. When you are traveling, never think that you have access to a charging port. So having the right chargers, for one, that take up very little space, like get a little GAN charger so it's fast and tiny. Anker is a really great brand for a lot of these chargers, and maybe one of these days, your boy will be sponsored by him, because I love Anker. And actually, at the conference, I managed to get my hands on a few different Anker products, and I'm very impressed with it so far. One of which was actually a MagSafe charger, and I am just pretty astounded by it. I already have a decent amount of battery packs now, but I think I'm going to start using that a lot more because it's very slim. It fits in my little sling bag really effectively, and actually, my other mini charger that just goes in the bottom of the phone, it is also Anker too. And both of them I basically have used in this portable format. Like, I'm just not even speaking about the whole one bag travel. If you have a sling, for example, that sling is not going to take up, you're not going to have much space in that sling for you to take up with the battery pack. So you don't want to use a big old blocky one. Even if it's thin, it's still taking up a lot of vertical space. So having one that's a little bit smaller and MagSafe too, no less, is really helpful. So never think that you're going to have a charging port. And in addition to that, you have to be careful at airports because some of those USB ports can be hacked. And so if you have just your phone directly connected to it, you can actually get hacked on your phone. It's a very rare occurrence, but it's something you still have to be mindful of. So sometimes there are little adapters you can get that will just kind of kill any data connection. Cool. Or you can just have a power brick, and that would just negate that too. And then there's also a matter of plugs depending on where you're traveling around the world. So there's some power bricks that will have adapters built into them. There's some power bricks that will have adapters attached to them. So actually, that's what I got. My little GAN charger came with alternative plugs, I think. And yeah, little alt plugs. So if I were to go to Europe, I could have the right charger. And then just making sure you have the right cables. So sometimes I bring extra cables because you never know if one breaks or you lose it, and you have one in your sling and your travel bag. So let's take a break from the tips here. That's 5 tips right there. I want to go back to the experience because I feel like with my experience with the travel bags, I have a whole bunch of bags, and maybe I'll do a comparison video one of these days. But I find that I have, a Lenovo or Asus, whatever, laptop backpack. I never use it, but it's super thin, and so it would actually make for a very nice day bag at a conference. And so the next conference I go to, I might bring that instead of my actual backpack, because the actual backpack is a little bit thicker. And then I have my travel backpack that is the personal sized one, and it can be a little bit too thick. Actually, you gotta be careful with some of these airlines where it might be a little bit too thick, but as long as I don't expand it, it should be just fine. It's just like a normal backpack. But once you expand it, which is how you would probably want to use it if you're bringing stuff back, that's another issue with Vid Summit, why I brought 2 bags, but that's a good issue, but you know what I mean. And then I have my actual travel backpack, the carry-on sized one. And what I ended up doing for this trip, I should have just brought a suitcase instead of the travel backpack. But what I ended up doing was bringing my carry-on travel backpack and my personal item travel backpack, because both of them have a lot more room than some of the other containers that I have. I felt like the suitcase was a little bit too rigid, which might have been a good thing. I probably should have. I think with conferences like this, I need to start thinking about that, because when I went to Podcast Movement, the rigidness of my suitcase was actually a really good thing because of all the stuff I put in it. And I had a lot of stuff to bring back from Vid Summit because I went to every booth, tried to go to VidMart every single time I got a chance to, and managed to accumulate a decent amount of stuff, including that really cool print of the Vitruvian Man in a high-tech design that I had AI generate a while back, but I had it printed by Eufymake. And I just really was astounded by the texture and the 3D feel to it. I'll make a video about it too in a moment. But that was something that I was like, okay, if I'm going to have 2 bags, let's get one that can expand. At least on the way back, I can have something I can have space to work with. I will say I did bring my sling on top of that too. And so I ended up having like 2 mini bags. And I brought one of my little minor slings too. So it's one of those things where I had a lot of options, which is great, but it also makes things a little bit complicated when bringing stuff back. And I actually did switch between my tablet sling and my mini sling a couple different times there, and I'm glad I did that. I barely ended up using my tablet at all because I've only ever really used it when my phone couldn't do the task that I needed. I'm glad I brought it because I needed to use it for a pretty important purpose for my website, but not really ideal. And so with these experiences that I keep accumulating, I keep dreaming of this day where I could just bring my travel backpack, put a packing cube in there of clothes, and then maybe another packing cube with my suit. I don't know for sure if that's ideal or not, but that would take up half the bag already, if not a little bit more so, 60% or something like that. Then I have things like this, which is my recording equipment, and even that's not like everything I should bring for recording. It's just the tripod, a couple handles, and maybe something else. I have a light here that I'm using for this computer, but I could probably take it off and actually apply it to this. And so this might not be big enough anymore for all the travel components I want to bring. But I could put it all in my sling and then call it a day. But then you're not doing 1 bag travel. So I know I keep bringing that point up, and a lot of you watching this might be like, okay, yeah, shut up. But those of you who are in that 1 bag travel subreddit in that world, you might get that sentiment where it's like you want to be minimalist enough to do that 1 bag. It's just nice to have the freedom with your hands being everywhere. And a lot of people don't count slings as a secondary bag, especially if it's about the size of this. But my tablet sling certainly is a secondary bag. It would be counted as a personal item. A tiny sling like this, like a Lululemon one, you could just swing around, put it behind your back, and no one will really notice. But something like this, it's still going to be 3D. It's still going to take up a lot of space. Even if you swing it around, it's going to protrude. So it's hard to sneak on a plane. I was kind of surprised, though, on the way back that I was able to just put my backpack that I'm carrying down towards the counter as I'm scanning my badge, and so they barely even noticed, and so I was able to skip past without having them worried about the size, because I was thinking I was pushing the limits on the size. It did fit underneath the seat, but just barely. And so some more tricks and tips about traveling. So I had mentioned about all the supplements, because that has been something that you can do ahead of time, preparation wise. There are a few things. If you're going to, a civilized place, right, which most of us are, you can go ahead and go to a store and grab things that you need there. Now, I tried not to bring like shampoo and conditioner because I figured they're going to have it at the hotel. Cool. Save me some space, save me some room in my toiletry kit, and make it not as heavy. That's good. But one thing I almost always do now is I go to like a Kroger or a Walmart and I buy Carnation Instant Breakfast. I hate supporting Nestle. It's a terrible company, but sometimes you just need to have a breakfast shake. Aldi's has a really good meal replacement shake that's kind of equivalent. But essentially you spend anywhere between $6 to $14 depending on where it's at and the cost of the drinks. But you essentially get 6 breakfasts in a liquid form, and it's quick. Chug it down and you have your breakfast right there. And oftentimes I would either have it with my continental breakfast from the hotel, or I had it in the midday when I was kind of peckish, and maybe that's what I should have done. Actually, I think it would have been more effective for me. Here's a tip: I had the continental breakfast at the hotel, and most days I had dinner, but the dinner was not always super filling because I was mingling and I wasn't eating, and so I kind of felt a little bit hit or miss when it came to actually eating. Notice how I skipped lunch when I said that, and I skipped lunch most of the days when it came to the conference, and that's not good. And I did not want to keep skipping lunch, but by the time I realized it was already like dinner time, I would eat at 7:30 in the morning, and then I would go throughout my day, and then realize, oh, it's 2 p.m. Oh, it's 4 p.m. Oh, it's time for dinner now, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever. And I hadn't eaten lunch that day. So had I thought about this ahead of time, and I think for my next conference I'm going to do this, essentially I'm going to bring those little drinks with me and have one in the afternoon, just chuck it real quick, and that will probably make a big difference in energy expenditure. So that is one thing that I think is like a lot of people overlook that you can do, is just have a little shake. And then protein powder would be good, or even having something along the lines of this, where the Skippy peanut butter. Don't ask me why I had this on my desk, but having protein on hand. I even brought a protein bar with me. I don't think I even touched it. I probably should have, but having protein on your hand, and like I think I would have been a lot more effective at communicating with people at the conference and doing things. And even right now, I think I'm lacking a little bit of protein, and so my articulation's not as adequate as I would hope. But having some sort of thing you could either bring with you, because this technically counts as a liquid because it's peanut butter, but not really. And then you can go ahead and buy some of that at the store if you can. There was actually a gas station pretty near where I was staying, so I could end up going and get a caffeine on the last day when I needed a little extra boost. But never think that you can rely on those things, so you try to bring them with you. That's why I like the caffeine packets, because there's no liquid in them, so you don't have to worry about getting in trouble for it. And you can slip some in your bag, you slip some in your sling, and it takes up very little space, and you can make sure you have caffeine no matter where you're at. You just have to find water somewhere. And having a water bottle is really helpful, but you have to be okay with losing that water bottle. So if it's very sentimental, don't bring it with you. And then from there, a few more tips and tricks for your travel experience. I might actually end up doing only like 8 because I don't want to make this video too long. But I brought more socks and underwear than I probably needed to, and that's a good thing. I also failed to bring enough shirts with me somehow. Like I had enough pants, but I didn't have enough shirts, despite the fact I brought enough for one of each day. But I didn't realize that I was going to be sweating so much and then having to change in the middle of the day a few different times. But luckily I did get some shirts from the conference itself, and I was able to kind of use that. But I wanted to kind of mention that as a tip, because sometimes you're not going to have as much things as you might need. And it's not always easy to do laundry. You could do laundry in the sink. There are these little detergent sheets now that are just dry paper sheets that you just put in the washer and it'll become soap in the actual washer itself. You could probably use those in the sink a lot more effectively. Just bring 3 of those with you, 2 of those with you. You can even cut them up and then fold them up a little bit more to take up less space. And that I probably will actually bring those on my next trip, now that I think about it, because it's very interesting to me how I really wanted to do laundry. And I wasn't sure how to do that in a hotel because they don't really tell you. And so I'm like, how do I go about washing all these clothes when I needed to have something the next day? And that would be how I would do it. Just use those little laundry detergent sheets and maybe find a way to do it in the sink or the shower or something like that. Washing me and my clothes, as the old meme said. And then from there, let's say you were recording. Okay, let's talk to the content creators here. This is not a content creation channel. Go check out my other channel. I'll be actually doing a review video of, or more like an overview video of VidSummit and a review blog post over on that channel. And I'll link it down below to Content Polymath. But as a content creator, you want to be able to bring with you as many pieces of recording equipment as you can, because you want to try to record. And this is how I've gone about doing it, right? I have my MagSafe one and just a regular clamp one. And you just attach it to the tripod here. And I have done the whole gimbal thing, but sometimes it's nice just to have a simple stick. Your hand's not going to be that shaky. And so I actually am considering getting another gimbal if I can find one that's small enough. Because again, it's about size. That's one reason why I like this tripod, because it takes up very little space. It does get somewhat tall. And actually, I used it the other day to record a podcast with my friend Doc on the other channel. And it seemed to work out pretty well, despite the fact they didn't really have much articulation and movement around. But you can move the ball head. You can extend this out. That's cool. And then what I'm using as a recording device are these Wavelink mics. And the Wavelink is actually, I think, a off-brand of Hollyland. And I actually got to see them at the conference, which is really cool. But essentially, it's one of the first microphones that I was able to get to connect with my phone, which is surprising because I had those little black cheap USB mics or wireless mics, lav mics, that just didn't work for some reason with my phone or even my tablets. Actually, I think it did work with my tablet, but it did sound kind of garbagey. This sounds pretty good. It does pick up the a little bit too much, but that's not too bad considering that it is a lavalier mic. I don't really care that much. I'm going to just fix it in post or something like that. And so that's really interesting. Like, this doesn't take up very much space. Now, again, if I were to bring the lights, I probably couldn't fit it in there, not to mention the cable, and then I need to have a power source. It's not a battery-powered light, so I would have to have, like, one of my battery packs. But since I have so many, that's not that big of a deal. I'll find a way to charge it. And then I could also probably charge the phone at the same time as well. And that's a very interesting approach to having that content creation. And so another part of the tip is having some sort of splitter. So I bought this for my light and camera over my monitor here, and this is actually the little stand that comes with the light. But you can essentially, I bought another one of these that has 3 little plugs, and that way, oh no, it's actually T-shaped like this one, but it has cold shoe mounts, and that way I can put a whole bunch of stuff on the tripod and have a lot more effective range of equipment when I'm recording later on this month. And so it's very interesting what you can do with recording equipment, especially when you can try to find creative ways like that little T-shaped thing that I showed you there. It's only like $10. Put it on the tripod instead, and now you can hold a light microphone or whatever, and I think that will be a lot more effective at making higher quality content without having to take up that much space. Let's see. When it comes to, let's say, portable hygiene. So here's one of my another tip that I make. I have a separate toiletry kit. I have a micro one. I don't think I have an example, but it basically takes up the same amount of space as this little box, right? And so that's a lot of space, but I put it in my sling, and it has a little micro toothbrush. It's like a little one that folds in on itself, and then micro toothpaste inside of it. And then I have like a little piece of little sample cologne thing. I have gum. I have, let's see, like, fun time stuff if I need to. And then just various little toiletry things as well, like gum and mints and whatever I can find, and put it all in my little bag. And that way, if I was talking to someone or was eating dinner with somebody and I wanted to have like an actual conversation without having bad breath, or I could take care of my hygiene, I have like a little deodorant wipe in there too. These are things that you can think about, especially if you want to be more successful in whatever endeavor you're at this conference or traveling for. Maybe you're wanting to go home with somebody too, and you want to be freshened up for it. And so these are things to think about when you're going around places. You can bring that little toiletry kit in a pocket of a blazer or in a little sling if you're not necessarily in a formal event. And so it's one of those things where you can go ahead and bring more with you than you have to, but you'll be happy that you had it. Same with like a little bottle of Tylenol and a little bottle of Tums. Those of you who are 30 plus know, a little bottle of Tums. And I think that is about it. I think that's what I'm going to count as the 10 tips, because I can't think of anything else. But I wanted to make this experience video because in the end, regardless if you're doing one bag travel, if you have a backpack and a suitcase, you're going to want to not bring as much with you because you're probably going to bring a lot back, and you want to have enough space for that, which is why I brought that secondary travel backpack, because it expands. And so I'm glad I did, but I think in the future I'm going to probably keep it a lot more simple. And I hope that this video has helped you. Please leave a comment down below if you want to hear about VidSummit, or if you want to hear about One Travel, or if you just want to talk about little tips and tricks. Cheers.